What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bingetown TV. This is Brian here with Luke and Jimmy, and today we're going to be covering MGM Plus's hit show From. This is going to be season 3, episode 4, entitled There and Back Again. Before we get going here, a couple of housekeeping items as per usual. If you are listening on our From Specific feed, I do want to reroute you over to our main Bingetown TV flagship feed. There you can find pretty much all of our podcast episodes. We cover a bunch of shows. We had a big month. I guess the last 2 months now that we're in October, covering The Boys, House of the Dragon, Dark Matter, and we are already looking ahead to some awesome shows coming up with Arcane, Silo, and Dune Prophecy. Not my cup of tea, but it sure is Luke's cup of tea. So we got cups of tea for everybody. And if you want to find all of our entire library of shows, episodes, you can go on over to bingetowntv.com or just look us up again, Bingetown TV, on any of the podcast apps. You can find us. And finally, we have a blossoming Discord community, and that can be found, you guessed it, Bingetown TV. We love talking theory. So if you like what you heard, go on over to the Discord and you can chat with us. But we have an episode here to talk about, episode 4 of From. And boy, have you heard this before? Not many answers, but was it a fun ride? Absolutely. Do I even care anymore midway through season 3? I don't know, but it was a good episode. It had me on the edge of my seat. I think Dabby gets reintroduced into the fray, which is awesome, but you know, the whole episode, you barely had a chance to catch your breath. I've been talking a while. Luke, Jimmy, what do you do? Go.
I can jump in, just give my high level view real quick. I'm starting to notice a pattern with this season, and it's a pattern that I'm kind of into. And what I'm talking about here is I feel like it's been in every other episode cycle of plot and theory centric episodes into tense and emotional and scary episodes. And the reason I'm okay with this is because I felt that they really stepped away from the monsters in season 2, and now we're getting more horror more consistently, and we get to see these characters dealing with this emotional just ramifications of this and more death. Like, I love all of that. I think we're really amping up the horror, and we're kind of going to go right into episode 5, I think still the same night because of the whole Randall thing that happened at the end. So I've been liking this pattern. One of the things I was really excited for this episode was two things. Was obviously the Tabby and Victor's dad reunion, which I think they did a good job with. We haven't gotten Victor and his dad, but all of that stuff really worked for me. And then they almost dropped the ball with the Victor and the Sarah story that Victor was going to tell, because he really tried to walk away and do the whole "we're not talking" thing. But even though he did get pulled back in, I'm not sure I was satisfied enough with what I expected. I thought there was going to be more there. We did get a couple of tidbits of information regarding Christopher and then the puppet, so we can talk about that. But they need to give us a little bit more, because, again, I thought that was going to be a highlight of the episode, but it was really kind of just like a B or C plot. But overall, the episode was so good because everything that was going on with Colony House, the monsters, torturing Boyd again, giving the keys, like all of this stuff, like is just pushing forward the agenda that they're here to just cause chaos, and they love seeing Boyd squirm. And the reason for that is still anybody's guess, but overall it was a good episode. And even Donna got me when she broke down finally. Like, I kind of needed that for her character, so she could stop being such a hard ass that just kept basically being like the mole, like the obvious mole. It finally felt like she was a person this episode. That was good to see. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the girl that dies, that gets shot by the cop, that was Nikki, the girl that we hated from the beginning, right? So that's why she
Yes.
was getting lines, because they knew they were queuing
Yeah.
her up for like a death, and they wanted us to care a little bit more than just a background character. Still worked for me. I hate that cop was such an idiot. She should have listened to Tabby. But passing it over to Jimmy, how'd you think of episode 4?
This show is just so damn entertaining. And I posted on TikTok, YouTube, a couple things, a hot take that I thought was kind of a hot take, where it was episode 2's review with a 2-star review from IMDb saying nothing ever happens, all capitals, nothing, right? And I expected a lot of people to agree with me here. The biggest part of the hot take that I thought was that the person said, in episode 2, there was only 10 minutes of content because I skipped through knowing that the aftermath of Mrs. Liu's death was going to be something I didn't care about. And my point was, if you don't care about Mrs. Liu's death at this point, you shouldn't be watching from, right? And I was actually a little surprised that a lot of people were on the hot take side of the fence because they're just so frustrated that nothing is happening, quote unquote, nothing is happening. I don't think we're in the danger zone yet, but we do keep saying we're not getting any answers. But either way, I'm just so freaking entertained by the show. It's like made for me to want my eyeballs to just be staring at it over and over. We talked about the first 2 seasons with binge, 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 next step, next step, next step. And yes, this season is the same way. We're definitely not in the danger zone. We have 6 episodes left. So I really, really do think that they're setting us up for some answers this season. We talked about it in the first couple the first couple episodes with the stakes getting ramped up so high. It just seems like something's got to happen in a way that's going to give us some answers. I really hope. So, all I have to say, because Luke, honestly, I think you said it all perfectly, is that I'm so entertained. I wish we'll get some more answers, but I don't think we're in the danger zone yet. So, I'm not going to focus too much on that yet. If we start getting into the next couple episodes, especially by 6-ish, and we don't have anything, and then 7, then there's going to be a big problem. But for now, I'm not going to be negative about it. Brian, I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
So
Cool.
I do agree with your sentiment. I think they're doing a good job of setting us up for that. Luke, you touched on the Victor and Sarah stuff, seemed like kind of a C plot. I also thought the Jade, Christy, and Kenny was a little bit of an afterthought here, but I loved all the stuff with Boyd. Like I said, I think they did a good job emphasizing the significance of Tabby coming back, the gym finding her moment. I feel like that was earned and deserved. Like all the Boyd stuff, all the Colony House stuff, the Fatima stuff, that's all coming to a head. And they highlighted that this episode. Jim, to your point, I think that's getting close to the point where we can't avoid answers anymore. Next episode, I have to assume, is going to be a progression of that Victor and Sarah conversation. Victor's dad is going to get in there. Victor literally cannot, at this point in the series, keep going, I don't want to talk about it, I'm sad, and run away. If that ever happens again, I'm out. I'm not actually out, but I'm out. And again, I think the Christy, Kenny, and Jade stuff is also going to get more fleshed out next episode, which is kind of what, Luke, what you were saying. They're every other episode kind of progressing different things. And yeah, I mean, like you said, it's at a very basic level, it is wildly entertaining television. So I enjoyed it. Another good episode.
Yeah, and I will say something that I did notice, and Brian, you touched upon, and that's why I wanted to jump in, is that because we want answers so badly, and it is starting to get to the point where answers could be coming from, at least we're hoping, from different avenues, right? The Sarah and Victor stuff, maybe we'll get some answers for what's going on in Fromville. Then the Boyd, obviously, Boyd's always a big deal. And then Tabby, of course, all these different avenues. And it actually was making me think, are they having too much go on at one time where last episode we were like, okay, they took the scarecrow / totem down, shit's gonna hit the fan, and then next thing you know, this episode, Kenny, Jade, and Christy are getting like 5 minutes of screen time, and they have a quick conversation and nothing happens, right? And then you say, well, what the hell was that? We'll get more next episode. But because we want to answer so bad, certain times when certain storylines or plots don't get emphasized, it's very noticeable. And it also may be very noticeable because, again, this is a binge show and we're used to binging it. So I'm used to just getting what I want ASAP, next step, next step, next step. So yes, I was like, yes, we need this conversation with Victor and Sarah. And we did. And I was like, yes, we need to see some crazy shit happen in the cabin. And we didn't. And I'm like, oh, well, I can't believe they didn't really do much with that. But you only have 47 minutes to do it. So hopefully next episode we do get more. And I'm sure we will.
And that is a thing, is that the show would have done better if it was an hour each episode. Like if they did the normal premiere TV type of length, because that extra 15 minutes adds up across seasons, and all of that is that communication that we have to assume is happening in the background, which we hate because that's just poor writing to do it in that fashion. But anyway, I don't want to harp on that because I always do. Are you guys ready to jump into the plot, or do you have one more thing to add, B Toms?
I was just going to say, one of you mentioned because of where we left Randall, hopefully next episode will still be in this same night. So maybe they could just shift the focus of this same night over to the cabins, over to Victor and Sarah.
And I
But
think
with
that's
that said,
probable. Yeah.
yeah, that said, I do want to kind of get into talking about this episode. We are going to take it in the buckets we've been talking about already, what's going on at the cabins, Victor and Sarah, and then everything else. So let's start with Jade, Christy, and Kenny at the cabins. And guys, do we really have that much to dissect other than just roaring applause that Jade is finally talking to people and sharing what he has learned after 2.5 seasons?
Finally, dude.
Finally. Hey, we've been saying it forever. It's maddening. There's some hilarious Reddit memes where, I don't even need to get into it, but it's basically just making fun of the fact that every time someone has something important to say, someone asks them about it and they say, I don't want to talk about it, and they walk away.
Yep.
Jade has done that a good amount. He's talked about certain things with Tabby, but for someone who sees as much as he does, people don't know enough about it. So I'm very happy that he started to spill his guts to Christy and Kenny. And again, not much happens in this scene, but it's very important that they're finally talking.
Yeah. And I have 2 comments for the scene, and that's pretty much it. And the one being that I've been pounding the table saying that Kenny is the heartbeat of the show. He continues to represent that in a good way. He is the emotion, and he's how you get the audience to really like care about the characters. And I think he does that well. Christy and even Jade played off it really well. Because if you remember, it's been a while, but Jade and Kenny's mom had a really interesting and like kind of like just like cute little relationship. They even had one of my favorite moments of the entire show. But that is so I like that he got to put his piece in there and tell her, like I said, hi, things like that. That was nice. But that was my first thing. And my second thing, which I think is important just to highlight for future episodes, is that even though Jade did take down the totems, that wasn't something that stopped whatever the entity was that was outside. If it was monsters or if it was something else, the totem wasn't what was preventing it, because the totems were there in the first place. Taking it down didn't like allow that monster to then get into cabins or anything like that, even though they have the ritual
So
stones. But I'm
far.
just saying that so far, but there was no like connection that we saw yet.
What happened this episode is the same thing that happened to Kenny and Jim. So it's consistent so far. If the night progresses and maybe some other stuff happens, him dismantling that totem has to be significant somehow.
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed if it wasn't. Do you guys have any theories that you feel good about what is out there? Or I guess a better question would be, what is your confidence level that that is just a run-of-the-mill monster that we're familiar with or something else?
I don't think it's a monster that we're familiar with. I don't. But it's weird because I was going to say exactly what you said, Brian. It's the exact same scenario. What is it? 1 or 2 knocks on the wall. Whether it's the door or the wall, it's enough to jar them, and that's it. I was waiting for like a knock and then like a smash or something because the totems were down. But instead, it was the same exact thing that Kenny and Jim dealt with. I don't know what would be doing that. To me, a lot of people were wondering if this is going to be a survivor that isn't in the town, somebody that is using the totems to survive in the cabins by themselves, or whether it's one person or a tiny community. But a normal
Eloise,
person,
maybe, who knows?
I mean, yeah, who knows? But one person wouldn't just knock on the wall unless they're trying to see like what's inside to see what reacts to it. Kind of like when you have a bug or like a mouse and you're trying to hit it to see if it runs out the door. I don't know what else it could be if it was a normal person. So I'm kind of really, I have no idea.
And I'm putting this out there because I said this in the past and I'm still sticking by it until I get disproven, that I think whatever is out there is not a monster, and it is the same thing that pulled Sarah and Boyd's tent, or like there's something connecting there all the way back in season 1, because we never got that answer, of course. So maybe there's some sort of connection of this entity outside of the compounds of like the actual town. So I don't know, but yeah, do you have any thoughts, B-Toms, or are we just...
Yeah, I think it's Aragog from Harry Potter, just
Yeah,
giant
that's
ass
what I was
spider
saying.
making the webs. Nah, he's just knocking on
Luke would lose
doors.
his
Hey, you
shit.
guys good in here? Hey,
never
that
be
would
back there.
Fromville does not need a giant spider. It's terrifying enough in there. I think my lasting point is just I do like this trio on screen together. Christy, Kenny, they have an established chemistry, but throw Jade in, who's just one of all of our favorite characters and kind of the wild card. I just like this trio together. Is
Agreed.
that all we need for the Jade Christy Kenny?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
let's
was
go
just
right
gonna
over to
say,
Victor and Sarah.
Cool. So Victor and Sarah, the whole episode, they're just building the fort, and then Victor kind of starts talking. Luke, like you said, he tries to shy away, do his thing. I love that Sarah dug in her heels. Am I starting to like Sarah? You bet your ass
Oh
I
yeah.
am, dude. I
she's
love
the
the line.
scariest thing in Fromville, man.
Yeah, great
She
line.
paid the
And she
price, man. That's all I wanted when I was going on my rant back in season
for
2,
sure.
and she paid the price. She is on the other side of that. Stock is trending up for Sarah.
100%. But the crux of this conversation is Victor acknowledging that it is important that he remembers and deals with his trauma, specifically that one infamous day where everybody, the whole town was just annihilated, including his mother. He does bring up Eloise and said, she didn't listen and ran off. I'm not sure if he mentions anything other than that, but we do get the reveal of what was in the suitcase that he dug up. And it was essentially the boy in white told him, don't bury the bodies if that's too difficult. Just bury items that were significant to them. And, he's pulling them out. This was Dolores. This is yada, yada, yada. And of course, we get to Chris. And that's kind of the important meat of this. And his flashback links Christopher, who we've already heard, saw the sign, kind of went crazy, to the ventriloquist or the dummy that we have been seeing from time to time. Excuse
Right.
me.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
So
I mean, go ahead.
yeah, Jasper, I think is the name of the puppet. I think that was name dropped at some point, so we can refer to him
Yes.
as that. He was in the tunnels, but also
Yes.
at some point in this story, when we're eventually when we get to the meat of whatever we were given, he's talking to Christopher, and I don't know if that's an unreliable narrator situation, because that can be a possibility or is it literally something that's being animated and starting to control anything, because it looks like it was the one that was actually directing Christopher. It looked like Jasper the puppet was giving the instructions in that little flash. And before you jump in, because Jimmy, I'm sure you have a million
Yeah.
things to say on that, I just want to point out the show is obviously trying to, and maybe it's not obvious, but I thought it was obviously trying to show Christopher and Jade almost having a similar path, where
Yes.
Christopher got obsessed with the symbol in the same exact way that we've seen Jade over the last season and a half. So I don't think Jade's going to end up in that same position, but whatever Christopher went through, we're probably going to see some steps along the way as Jade hits him, until I'm sure our boys and girls bring him back.
Okay, so I have a lot to say, like you said, Luke. And
Mhm.
first thing I want to bring up is Victor is like the definition of unreliable narrator, right? So we have no idea. But it is important to note that when Victor saw the dummy, Jasper, in the tunnels with Tabby, he lost his shit. And we didn't know why he lost his shit. Remember? We were like,
Did he move
what's going on?
too?
I think he was just sitting there. So that's
Okay.
the other thing, though. But what he does move when Jade sees him. But I'll get to that in a second.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was mixing it up with. Yes.
So we see him in the tunnel. The light gets put on him, and it's obviously not a monster. It's the dummy. Victor loses his shit, starts to run away, and we don't really have a reason for that. Now we do, because now we're going to get more about Jasper, whether this is again an actual ventriloquist dummy that can speak for itself, or it's just Christopher going mad and he's talking to it, and Victor is just like assuming what the
Imagining
other
it.
side of the story,
Yeah.
yeah, imagining the other side of the conversation. But this brings up a huge theory that was brought about last episode. I didn't bring it up, and now it's just really like hitting it on the nose for me. So let's see what you guys think, okay?
Mhm.
I'm going to start off with something that doesn't have anything to do with the dummy or Jade, but it's going to come back to that. So in episode 3, we have the scenario where Tabby is in the car with Henry, right? The song Blue comes on. She says, this is mine and Jim's song. Henry says this was Miranda's favorite song. It's been stuck in the cassette player since before she left. Okay. Moments later, she goes into the glove compartment and she sees the bracelet, right? She sees the bracelet, and that makes her lose her shit, because how the heck can this bracelet be in the glove compartment when, first of all, I made it myself for Jim. He lost it when Julie was being born. And then I somehow saw it again in Fromville. Now it's freaking here. You guys are messing with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Brian, you brought up the massacre that occurred when we were talking through Victor and Sarah's conversation. A lot of people are trying to figure out what the heck this deal is. And even I said it last episode. When you start hearing these things, you're like, okay, how are you trying to figure this out here? Is Tabby and Miranda and Victor and Ethan and blah, 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 blah. Like, how are these people connected? I think the connection here is now not that they're the same person. So many people are saying, is Tabby the sister Eloise, right? Is Miranda alive? No, Miranda is dead. I don't think that Miranda or Tabby were ever alive at the same time. I think the key here is going to be reincarnation for the chosen one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in 1978, Miranda goes to Victor and Eloise, and she says, be brave, stay in the cellar, don't come out until dawn. I'm going to go save the children, and when I come back, we can go home. In 1978, that night, Christopher goes nuts. The massacre happens. Miranda is found dead by Victor. So Victor never sees his mother alive again. 1978 fits perfectly with when Tabitha could have been born. When Tabitha goes into the tower, you see all of the dates on the wall. The dates could be the dates that the new chosen one is born, meaning the last one was 1978. We don't see anything after. I would have to study it to see when the one before 1978 is, but the big thing here is reincarnation. When you die, your soul moves on. Dare I say, Wheel of Time shit, right? But when we have all this crazy stuff, whether it's Jade, Tabitha seeing the children, Tabitha's hearing the song, Tabitha seeing the bracelet, certain visions might not be visions. They could be memories or echoes of the past of past chosen ones, right? And give me a second because I'm going to get into Jade. But when we talk about Tabitha, with her being the chosen one, the new chosen one, just think about the fact that Miranda was seeing visions before she ever showed up in Frontville. She was somehow seeing visions of the tower, the children, the symbol, some man wearing a yellow outfit, things that she shouldn't have known yet. We don't know when the last chosen one died, but how do we know that the last chosen one didn't die at some point around that time? And then that's when it triggers. Well, no, I'm sorry. She's born after the past one dies, but then she starts seeing memories or echoes of the past or whatever. They're not actually just random horror visions, right? It would make sense that someone who has the same soul as the past person would enjoy the same song or create the same bracelet. You're not the same person, but your soul. It's just, I mean, literally, we could cut this, but it's literally Wheel of Time shit, right? Rand's like, I'm
I
not
see where
Lee
you're
Stein,
going. I
but
see, especially with the
yeah, you
Jade
know,
stuff. We
he's
keep going. Yep.
I'm my own person, but I have the chosen one's soul in me. So, what if Tabitha's destiny, she's born to be the chosen one to save everyone, and Jade is born to be the one to destroy everyone? Okay? Jade is Christopher reborn. Christopher dies. His chosen one status for what his purpose in the town is to go. It goes into Jade, right? Jade is now seeing this symbol. Who saw the ventriloquist dummy in season 2? Freaking Jade did. It turns to him and screams the same exact way it does at the end of the scene where Victor sees the ventriloquist dummy talking to Christopher, right?
Right.
I agree with you, Luke. I think that our boy Jade is going to defeat this status of being the chosen one to destroy everyone. But I think that we have a scenario here where we have Tabitha and Jade. One's destined to save, one's destined to destroy. And like Victor or like Jade here, he's seeing Civil War soldiers. Well, why? It makes sense if it's memories of past chosen ones back when them being dressed like that would be a thing.
So Jade's the dark one, you mean? And then
So we're saying, what's up
Tabby's
with these
ranch.
random soldiers? What's up with this Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So what's up with these random soldiers? Why is he seeing a guy with a knife through his eye? it might not be a horror trope. Whoa, geez, they're just throwing in some scary shit. What's up with
Mhm.
these Civil War soldiers? Oh, Fromville's been around for a while. Yeah, it has, but it's not a vision. It's a memory. It's something that he has seen as a past person.
And that is a satisfying way to answer these like impossible supernatural things like the visions. Like, we're never going to go back and see, why did Jade see that specific vision? There's just no way the show's going to be able to do that in a satisfying way. But if you give me the answer that it is almost like repressed memories or memories coming back from previous lives, I love that. That's a great answer. And you were saying specifically that you had this theory crafted almost a little bit in at the end of episode 3. So episode 4, you're saying, supported it a little bit. Is that because
Yes,
of just this
because
final scene with
the
Victor?
dummy.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
the scene with the dummy, because for everyone listening to the podcast, I am a little bit sick. I'm not pulling teeth out. I'm not sucking on blood or anything, but I'm a little sick here. I'm not Fatima sick, but so forgive my voice. But I have a whole YouTube script that I drew up while I was sick before I watched the episode yesterday that I am now updating for maybe either to drop this episode or to update it and to drop after next episode, because my guess in the script, and I wish I could read it to you, was just to say that, the chosen one with Miranda and Tabby, and then I also did bring up Jade, and I listed the things he's been seeing, and I listed the dummy, and I was like, holy shit, when it actually was a thing in this
Yeah.
episode.
Mhm.
So
I like it.
the scene
You
that
know,
just like cemented it for me.
I love a JimmyPa theory because JimmyPa says, "This is my theory. Here's the evidence." Me, I'm a freaking throw it on the board, wild claims type of theorist. But
Find
I
the why
love it,
later.
Jimmy. Yeah, find the why later. We'll get there. Maybe
Hmm.
not in From, but we'll get there. No, I like this a lot. I'm watching Avatar for like the nth time right now, and this is like Avatar: The Last Airbender stuff. All in
Yeah.
on Reincarnation. The one thing that I've actually been thinking about is, why why was Miranda able to start seeing these visions prior to getting into From, and Tabby didn't? Do you think it's going to be as simple as they have name dropped twice that they dropped acid, then the memories started? Do you think it's going to be like, oh, the acid like actually unlocked different pathways in her brain, and it will be something like that?
I would have very much so appreciated if they would have had a line where Tabby said, "I've had nightmares about these children before," meaning before I got into Fromville, not necessarily like Miranda, where she's dropping acid and then she's literally drawing and going nuts for however many days and weeks and months before she shows up in Fromville. But I would have liked if there was a scene that Tabby said, "I've seen these children before. I've seen this tower before in my dreams. I've been seeing it for years," or something like that. And we haven't had that. So I don't really have an answer, to be honest.
And if we never do get that specific answer, which I think we will get that answer, I'm almost okay with the acid thing being something because they did it twice. Like, they talked about it multiple times.
It would show
And I will,
intent on the writer's part, which I would
Yes. Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah.
yeah, and I will say another point here is, while Victor doesn't talk to many people, especially back in the first 2 seasons, he gravitated to Ethan, and that's just because Ethan was a child, and Victor literally is just a child because he never got to grow up. And that's another thing that I think his actor's doing so well, like the trauma that a little kid growing up in Fromville. I mean, we're so frustrated with him, but that is how he probably should be acting, to be honest.
Right.
But what I was going to say is, my wonder is if he gravitated to Tabitha because he sensed his mother's soul in her. Not like, oh, I sense the soul, but just like, you know, it's a
There was some
symbolism
sort
kind of,
of
right,
attraction. Yeah,
right,
I
or some
got you.
kind of
Yeah.
connection where, oh, she's a nice lady, things like that. Because he does basically say, like, you're a nice lady. That's all he really says, but there's no answer to it. But I would like to think that could be it.
I like it. I'll transition us into the rest of the scenes if we're okay with that. I just want to throw out one last line that I thought was hilarious is at the beginning of the storytelling, Victor's talking to Sarah and he's like, "Yeah, I had a sister too, except I didn't kill her." And he like looks her dead in
Yeah.
the eye. I
That was a
like, "Yeah,
laugh out loud for
that
me.
was cold." But anyway, is there
And he
anything
doesn't
worth
realize it's cold.
yeah.
That's why it's hilarious. He's
Oh
just
yeah,
saying shit.
he's just saying things. She doesn't even react like she's like, I get it, I get
Yeah,
it.
she's just like, oh,
But
whatever.
is there anything we want to bring up before we really start getting to the night where Slim Shady and Boyd are in the bus, which I'm happy that they actually got to spend that time together and have some talk because all I'm referring to is by before that is Tabby trying to get the medics to listen. I'm happy we talked all that time about like what we thought the medics were going to be and they just get murdered right away besides the cop.
Yeah.
Anything with them and then anything with the more important probably piece is Ethan talking to Thomas on the phone, which confirmed for a fact that just like the radio, that actually happened. It's not visions. So I like that they did that just to get that off the plate. Like that's a answer, quote unquote, if you want to give us that, but like it's a pathway to an answer. Is there anything we want to bring up before we really get to the main part of the night?
Well, staying along with that phone call, when Jim gets on the horn, it says they're not really your children anymore, which I think confirms that we were like, oh, is some sort of Thomas actually contacting through the afterlife? Thomas would never say anything like that to
Right.
Jim. So this is someone impersonating Thomas, which I think we all thought anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once the conversation gets further and further, you can tell that the act changes and they're not pretending to be Thomas anymore. And that's where you can just say, okay, it's definitely not Thomas. And honestly, I'm going to take it the same exact way as when we're talking to Father Kotri or Abby, because we see visions of them, but we've talked about this for so long. Is it the dark evil entity manifesting itself in them? Is it just a vision that we've seen before in other TV shows where they're just trying to have a conversation in their own head and they're using Abby or Father Kotri to be the person on the other side of it? I honestly do still think it's the evil entity. And talk about again LVP, man. Jim shaking the shit out of Ethan. What are you saying? What are you saying? I'm like, come on, man. You are just the worst, dude.
Handle it better, brother. You're a father.
Yeah.
I get it, man. Life sucks. You're dealing with some shit. Tabby's gone, but I mean, he just like went wild shaking Ethan. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can't think of another LVP forever now, except Dale.
Yes.
Dale is greater than Jim at the moment. Jim sucks. I'm sorry to Jim for your namesake,
I
but
know,
he
it's a
is just
shame.
being a terrible parent. That's all I
Yeah.
got though. Can we talk about Elgin and Fatima first because they're kind of like separate from all the actual
Absolutely.
action.
Yeah.
I mean, Fatima obviously starts getting a taste for the blood, which is something, but like I'm feeling really good about the Elgin's vision is Fatima, especially with the vision today saying, help me. That's like Fatima crying for help. But also, this is like the second time Tilly was kind of involved with Elgin's lucid dreaming, if we want to call it that.
She can be more than meets the eye because like I'm pretty much off she's the inside man train, but maybe not
Yeah.
even. Like it's not going to be a mole in the sense that this is an experiment and they send somebody in. Like I don't think that's going to be the answer. But Tilly could be like a witch almost. Like she's doing the tarot card magic. She's basically infiltrating. She's almost around every time. The last couple times Elgin's been seeing the kimono girl. What do we call her? What have we been
We just
calling
been
the
saying skinny scary girl.
yeah, like the
Calling her
kimono
Fatima,
wearing.
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fatima.
Fatima.
There does seem to be a connection of Tilly directly to Fatima and Elgin, and it makes sense that they would loop them all together because, like, there's too many coincidental scenes. Like, even earlier when Elgin's having his vision and he sees Fatima on the couch, like Tilly's there. She's like, I can see her too. And I know that was like a dream, but people are kind of starting to theorize like that there's more to it. Like, is she able to actually just put her influence onto these people? And I think that could be what's happening. And like whatever's going on with Fatima, like while it is progressing and she's now drinking blood, I don't think we got anything new though, right? Like it's just on the path of what we've been theorizing that she is totally becoming, if not the monster, that specific thing, that entity that Elgin's seeing. And she's screwed, man. She started the second she walked in there, I was like, this is either going to be a jump scare or she's eating something. And I don't think we've seen any of the monsters suck blood like that. I know that they'll rip out all the organs and open them up like that, but it seems like almost a little bit of a different thing, which would then support further that she isn't turning into a smile monster. She's instead turning into that phantom that Elgin's seeing. So I feel like it all tracks. And is it too obvious that it all tracks? That's where I'm at now.
I think we and a lot of the other fandom figured it out early, and they're just giving us the breadcrumbs more so now. So we think it's more obvious. There's, I'm sure, plenty of casual fans, and I always joke, my dad or your dad, Luke, or somebody watching where they're like, "Oh shit, she just sucked some blood. She's turning bad now." But I will say that, well, first of all, on the Tilly thing, the funniest thing about Tilly that everything you're saying tracks with it being some kind of connection. Tilly's sitting there and she's like, I feel so bad. And who is it? Elgin or somebody's like, oh, the girl who got shot, she's gonna be fine. He's like, no, I feel bad for Fatima, the crow. It scared her. It smashed into the wall. Like her baby, she's pregnant, like she's focusing on Fatima. And there's gotta be a reason why. Now, when I saw that she wanted time with this dead body, I started losing my shit because I was immediately thinking eating her. Okay, I'm glad it went to just putting the finger and around the blood and in the bullet hole wound and sucking the blood. But I was like, is she gonna just start eating this chick and being outed right here? So it's still a mystery to everybody else. But I want to bring something up that this is definitely not my theory. Did not know about this, but I saw it on Reddit, and I have to give props where props is due. Luke and Brian, have you watched Demon Slayer? I can't remember.
I've seen everything but the
First
newest season. I've seen all of it but the newest.
So I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I tried to type it in and it popped up /Demon Slayer on Google. So but this one says diet none only exists to deliver her baby into safe hands. But then there's another one in Japanese that says, again, Niobo, forgive me, I have no idea, but the translation is Blue Lady, habitat, abandoned villas, mansions, and ruins, diet, spoiled and rotten leftover food, otherwise humans.
Okay.
Well, Colony House is going to have to be vacated for that one to fit, but yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I don't know how to spell that, or I don't know how to translate that.
Yeah,
or
I wouldn't
say
even
it,
try that.
but it's props to Reddit. I don't, and again, it's Japanese. The lady that we're seeing is wearing a kimono. The connection with Fatima, it seems to be something that should be thought about, but it's funny. We're talking about, could it be fairies from Irish mythology? Could it be this Japanese mythology? It seems like these From creators and writers are just like, let's just throw all this shit on the wall and see which one we want to use.
I mean,
so
I don't mind it though, because they're crafted mythology that has weaknesses, strengths, tendencies, and I think it works well. It doesn't have to be the actual answer, even if it is based on those type of things.
Right.
Just they don't need to be Fae, the smiley monsters, but even if they exhibit all the same patterns, that's still that's not bad writing or anything, just because you're pulling from different things. And
right.
I just don't, the kimono just seems so out of place. And even if this is that, what you're describing, there needs to be, what's the catalyst that kicked off the first time we're seeing this type of monster in this town, right? Is it them having, I've said this in a previous podcast, jumping up to level 2 of whatever Fromville's trying to do to all these people? That's possible, but at this point it's just guesswork, because there's no reason that we're going to get the first of a unique type of monster that we haven't seen any of in the past. So I don't know, but I like it.
Did the pregnancy come out right about the time the lead smile monster died?
Yeah, it did. So
that could be a catalyst. Also, that all kind of happened around the same time as the general changes, getting to the locust and so, it's part of that. Whether it's leveling up or something else, who knows? But it tracks.
Yeah.
I really like the idea. I really like the idea that Fatima could be just one of those monsters that haunts them at night and it's looking like Fatima.
Dude,
I just can't. It just seems so cool to me.
I completely agree. If that is Fatima's fate in this show, I'm kind of down for it, and I feel like that would make Ellis turn into just this hardened badass. So
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
love me some Fatima, but like, you know.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
the last thing I will say is, Luke, you asked, has anyone ever done something like that, meaning like suck the blood or lick the blood? The only thing we have is her name was Jasmine, of course. She got a name, and it's the major other LVP, the guy who lets the monster in the window of Colony House, that falls in love with the monster, gives her the flowers. She like kisses him and then bites his tongue off, and then kind of like, I don't know if she bites his neck or just, but it's just she has blood running down her mouth, and she never
Okay.
really changes into her monster form. That doesn't mean too much. It could just mean she bit his tongue off and it's blood, but I don't know. We
Yeah.
haven't really seen that those monsters actually enjoy their food. We've been talking about the fact that they're feeding off the emotions of the town, and they're just killing because of the torture's fun.
Yeah.
So again, it could be. And I guess the last thing is that this lady, this kimono lady, talked to Elgin and said, "Save me," but like, doesn't mean
That
anything
could be,
yet.
I mean, even more Fatima ammo there for me. But
Completely agree.
let's switch gears to everything else, because I mentioned it earlier, like the whole everything starts with Slim Shady and Boyd on the bus talking out their plans, which I love, because here they have a conversation, and Randall slash Slim Shady says, like, I've been basically taking notes on these monsters. They all have routines, and that connects back to all the way in, I think, early season 2, when the original Smiles, the monster we were calling Smiles, goes onto the bus and like sits down and like does, like, they have personalities. And this, anybody's guess of what that actually means, but I do really like that he was trying to gain some recon on it, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going in the sheriff's. If you're going to do this, I'll sit here and get a front row seat with you. So I liked how it was set up. And then of course it naturally leads to the chaos of the ambulance coming in, and just all hell breaks loose. And I loved this whole sequence of events. I thought the tension was there. I was getting worried that the writing was sloppy with the monsters until the monster gives the keys to Boyd. Like, I was like, why is everybody not dead yet? But then it made sense, and it all clicked in that exact moment when, yeah, we're going to take Randall and we're going to mess with him and kill him like we want to just for fun. But here you go. Like I thought that was like a chilling moment. Everything seems to be centered around Boyd still when it comes to the specific Smile monsters. And there needs to be some sort of plan or end game for them, because they're not just going to, I mean, they could just keep killing everybody around him, which would be interesting. But I just love the dynamic that Boyd almost seems untouchable in both like a meta audience way, because he's the face of the show, and also the monsters will literally not kill him because they want to torture him. And I love everything about that. It's almost like built-in plot armor that makes sense. So yeah, sign me up. It was a very interesting sequence of events, and I love that Randall was even willing to sacrifice himself. Well, he wasn't going to sacrifice himself, but he was willing to help the squad. And then of course that turns super negative for him, and he freaks out and starts cursing off Boyd.
Far and away the best episode for Randall slash Slim Shady.
Mhm.
I love that he has been taking note of their actions
Yep.
and committing it to memory. And he even says, hey, after the thing I've seen, me, Julie, I was going to call her Juliet, me, Julie, and Marielle have seen, like, you would want to help too. So it seems like he genuinely wanted to be on board. Unfortunately, it might be short-lived because he might be short-lived. But yes, I loved all of that.
Put it on the board though. Is he dead or no?
No,
No.
he's not dead, but
Okay.
I also don't think he's gonna come back healthy and happy
Right. It
either.
seemed like
They
half
didn't
his
say
face was like ripped, right?
This is his villain arc, man.
the nurse monster said, you can have these, but we get to keep Randall. And the other thing is that he keeps seeing the locust.
Mhm.
Now, we haven't seen Julie and Marielle exhibit that, but I have to assume that they're going to have some residual stuff too. And it also seems like the monsters kind of maybe control the locust too, because, like, right when they really needed to handicap, incapacitate Slim Shady, like when they had him cornered and they were ready for him to stop running, boom, locust swarms, and he just like goes in fetal position, and they just like walk all around him. So like,
Yeah.
it seems like they can kind of control that. Just more power for the monsters, if you will. But I loved all this Slim Shady stuff.
And just to put it
Yeah,
out there, Dave,
producer
he's
Dave.
watching. So producer Dave, he's a little bit behind because he's watching live. He hasn't been watching the screeners. He hates Randall with a passion, so I know he's gonna love this moment. He's gonna be so happy that he's getting like half his face ripped off and caught by the monsters.
Everything with Slim Shady, Randall, and Boyd, so 3 guys, Slim Shady, Randall, and Boyd, is so interesting because the first thing I want to bring up is we've been talking about these monsters being like NPCs since the very beginning, and this would have been such an interesting thing to have shot or thrown at us early in season 1 and 2, and it's now surprising to me because Randall says that they basically are like acting like NPCs. They have the routines. They do the same thing every night. The nurse comes and taps on my window and messes with me for whatever, and the couple go sit on the bench and blah blah blah. After the events of season 3, you would think that that would stop. You would think that they wouldn't have their NPC habits. They would just be doing what they want because they showed us in episode 1 and 2 that they are more sentient and they
Mhm.
are, so that was a little confusing to me, but maybe they're like literally NPCs that are turned off until something turns them on and says, okay, now you're going to do what I say, go follow these orders.
Jasper the
I don't,
puppet.
or yeah, Jasper the puppet, the evil entity, whoever that is, whatever. Jasper from the 100, it could be any of them, dude.
Dude, even though they're showing us that the monsters are more sentient, I can't shake the feeling that they are just foot soldiers and that
Yeah,
they have
no,
their own
I agree.
restraints. I almost just it was highlighted in this episode, but they're kind of patterns and stuff that almost reminds
Yeah.
me of like how ghosts were portrayed in The Magicians. Like they kind of have their set loops that they
Yeah,
can't
they're like
really
memory patterns
go out
almost.
of. Yeah, even though this episode they did stray from those patterns, but
If they're
I
Mhm.
don't know.
told
They're
what to do, maybe. That's the thing.
yeah, I'm kind of with you
Yeah,
there.
that is
And
very weird, but we'll have to get some answers. We'll have to get some
and
answers.
not that it needed to be shown, and we could have probably just assumed, but it was nice that we got to see Slim Shady throw the ritual stone up at them in
Yes.
person and just check that off the list that
Stand back.
obviously has no power. But
Yeah.
it does seem that, Jimmy, I know there was at one point you were bringing up the theory that the stones are just fake. I feel like that
Yeah.
takes away from that theory, which is something I think we all want. We don't want the stones to
Yeah, no,
not
I
actually have
agree.
some
Yeah.
level of power, so I think that checks out, but yeah, man,
I
like,
like
goddamn, the reunion, like, while this chaos is happening, I just thought the Jim and Tabby reunion was good, like, it hit for me, like, you said it earlier, Brian, like, it was deserved. Um, Go ahead. You open your mouth.
Just I mean, the whole opening to the ambulance coming in, how Tabby is pleading, just get to the town and you got to trust me on this. Obviously, as everybody would, they just think she's crazy.
Mhm.
But to compound what Tabby already knows with them handcuffing her in the
Ugh.
ambulance.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. She is just like, you wrote my death sentence, period. Like, I am done if you handcuff me here. I would
Mhm.
be freaking out.
and this is the other thing that was crazy to me. Couple points here. First one is Randall has that stone, that talisman in his hand to to hold it up like garlic to vampires and say back up. Get
Mhm.
in the freaking ambulance, all of you, and put the talisman up and chill.
Me too, I was thinking
What's
that
going
same
on
exact
here?
thing.
I was like, why is this not happening? Why don't you have a talisman in your pocket unless they are all being used at all times? I mean, I'm guessing Randall grabbed the one from the bus and that's why he had it right there, but still, you go in the ambulance and you freaking put the talisman up and you're good. But the other thing is, we were questioning majorly, like, is the boy in white helping Tabby, bringing her to the real world to get some answers? And is the entity, could be Jasper, is the entity pulling her back in, knowing that she's getting too close or something? And my question would be, why isn't she a target here? Like, why did they just let her be handcuffed when I understand fully that Boyd is the main guy and they really want to screw with Boyd and they want to break him and stuff. And you see Boyd get broken a little bit more when he has to make that choice between
Mhm.
save who's there or save Randall. He makes the choice. He leaves Randall, and it kills him inside, and he unleashes that in the colony house. And that's part of what they're trying to do. But if Tabby is so important to Fromville ending and they know that and they're being told what to do by this entity, I can't imagine that they're not being told. I mean, it's almost like, to me, like, That is the plot armor. Like the Boyd plot armor is freaking awesome, like you said, Luke, because it makes sense. But the plot armor for Tabby didn't make sense for me right there because they had so much time to get her out. And the monsters were just chilling by Randall at the door of the ambulance for like ever.
Yeah.
And they didn't even like open the door.
To add on to it, we know that being the chosen one does not protect you from the monsters because of Victor's mom getting murdered in that exact way. So it's not like that is something that the monsters would just let go because you are seeing the vision.
Well,
so that's
I will say, did we ever have Victor say she died from a monster? Because my assumption was always it was Christopher.
They only say that they found her body. They didn't like we haven't seen it. Yeah, so I'm not sure that that's confirmed. Miranda died from the monsters.
okay. Yeah,
But still,
So she
I
gets the
I don't.
The reason why the monsters maybe aren't going for her is clearly it, assuming this theory is true, the reincarnation, whoever is pulling the strings has had this chosen one under wraps for hundreds of years. So it might just be playing into that. Give them hope. Let Tabby come back. Let her spread the good word. We're going to fuck her up anyway. Maybe it'll even be Jade.
True.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even if Tabby comes back with more knowledge, they are still playing like man down, if you will.
For sure.
We've been playing this game for centuries, Loose Theron.
Undefeated, baby.
We're pretty much almost there at the end of the episode, so I just want to just throw a couple other things out that happened at Colony House specifically. I know we talked to the Fatima stuff. Julie's dealing with talking about her own PTSD stuff to Ethan earlier in this episode, just putting that out there as well because we did talk about Randall's PTSD stuff. Not too important to talk about, but I just want to just put it out there, like the satisfaction that coursed through my body when Tabby goes into Colony House and looks at the cop and she's like, "I fucking told you." I was screaming that before she said it, and I was so happy that she was so mad at the cop for not listening to her because all of the paramedics would have lived. Randall would have been fine. Like none of that would have happened if they just listened to Tabby, and she was rightfully just freaking out. Obviously, they shouldn't have believed her either because, like you said, Brian, she's a crazy lady. But us knowing, I was like, "Yo, come on." Yeah.
Boyd lost his cool too at the cop too, and he just needed to vent, and that's where Jimmy, you touched on it. Donna's like, "No, stop." Brings him upstairs, thought they were going to have an argument, and she even shows the weakness. That was a great scene for me. We already touched on that too.
That's everything I have written down, to be honest. But yes, like I Boyd, if anybody deserves to just blow up, it's Boyd. But he even found himself like just being the shoulder for Donna. I always liked their dynamic. It's like the anchor for the whole town, and it put Donna back in my good graces. Her showing her being less aggressive to Boyd, who's really carrying the majority of the weight.
So I think the final thing to cover is the cliffhanger of the episode. The last thing we see is Randall sprawled out on the windshield of the ambulance. The monsters, quote, let him live, maybe, and put him there. What do you guys think his fate is in the next episode? Because I think we're going to get the resolution, but we can theorize.
There's no chance he's dead because like he talks at the end and like even if he's going to die, it's going to be next episode. But it does seem way more similar to thinking back to Brian Kelly, like the girl Kelly that had her head pinned to the tree, and also the vision that Jade saw of the guy pinned to the tree in the cabins. Like that seems more like this. So I guess that kind of lends itself to saying that I was under the impression that it wasn't the monsters that was pinning Kelly, but maybe it was because they're doing the same exact thing to Randall here. They're leaving him alive. They don't have to rip all of his organs out if it's going to add to the torture of Boyd or the townsfolk. And it seems like that's just what this is. Them showing they're in control. They let them go to Colony House. And like, no matter how much of an advantage that they think they have at any point, they're always on the defense.
I fully think that, like you said, Luke, they did this on purpose. They tortured him enough where he is going to have the most hatred you could ever have in this world for Boyd. But they tortured him in a way where he's going to live and he's going to be a villain. I really do think that this is going to be a problem. At least he's going to be an alive and walking reminder to Boyd of the choice he made and a choice that broke him just a little bit. And that's the only purpose. But I will say that seeing Donna and Boyd in the room and then the ambulance lights go off, I was like, oh, what is this going to be? It was such a cool scene. And then him laying on the hood. Yeah,
Did you
I think
see?
that it's
They
like
didn't
ripped
show his
cheek.
face, right? They just showed it. Yeah, yeah,
Looked
yeah.
like a
It
piece
reminded
of
me
his
of
cheek
Heath
was ripped.
Ledger's Joker a little
Yeah,
bit.
man.
Just like, yeah. But I mean, that's it, guys. I feel like we cruised through that one. There wasn't, like we said, Jimmy laid out the theories at the beginning. Like there wasn't much else there for us to dive into, but hopefully we pick up at this exact night in episode 5 so we can actually continue with the action and then move on to maybe more Victor stuff. Victor reunion with his dad, maybe more Victor Sarah conversation. There's a lot there that can progress us through the plot, so I just hope we keep the pedal going, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I'll say this once. I do want to bring up an Easter egg just for everyone who was watching episode 3 and enjoyed the whole connection with the song Blue by Joni Mitchell. In season 1, when you look at the jukebox, Blue by Joni Mitchell is on the track list. If you zoom in, it is a song on the jukebox, and it also does play for a moment when the Matthews family talks to Boyd after their first night when they have dinner with Boyd. So that wasn't the first time that we've heard Blue by Joni Mitchell. So the writers are leaving little breadcrumbs for us.
Did you see the Easter egg that the song Que Sera, is that what it's called, right? Like the theme song is
Mm,
written by the Pixies?
the Pixies. Yeah.
Just like
Yeah. The
Faye,
Pixies.
it's like the
Mm.
Pixies, like
Well,
it was.
it's
Yeah.
I think it's covered, so it's not written by them, but it's covered by them for the theme song. Literally,
There
they
you
were
go. Yeah.
chosen and they covered the song. Yes, the Pixies. So again, I don't know.
Easter egg.
I don't know.
I love a good Easter egg. And look at that, 30 seconds to spare before we hit the hour mark, at least on our recording. I think that's going to do it. Yes,
Mhm.
yes. I'm
Yes,
seeing
yes.
some nods from the boys. As always, if you like what you heard, give Bingetown TV a follow on Twitter and Instagram. Visit us on bingetowntv.com and subscribe to our show on Spotify, YouTube, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever else you may find your podcast. Once again, we are Bingetown TV, and thanks for listening.